In Australia, a policewoman wrestles against a male suspect.
Queensland police say the suspect was drug-affected, proven by his strength and attitude during the arrest. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gian Alganes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. DOH logs another spike in COVID cases in the Philippines. The lower house wants to include term limit amendments on charter change talks. Building blast kills dozens in Buenos Aires. Tesla unveils an updated Optimus program. And we're less than a day away from the historic Hallyu event of the year, the Asia Artist Awards 2023. The Department of Health has recorded 1,821 new COVID-19 cases from December 5 to 11, with an average of 260 daily. This made Metro Manila hospitals implement mandatory wearing of face masks inside of their facilities. Hospital staff, like in the Philippine General Hospital, vaccinated or not, are now obliged to wear face masks inside of their offices and clinical areas with low ventilation. Tondo Medical Center has also implemented the said health standard measure. Health experts, however, urge the public to wear face masks, especially in crowded places, at all times.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has designated the 26th of December as a special non-working day across the country, fostering a longer weekend for Filipinos to fully embrace holiday celebrations with their families and loved ones. Proclamation number 425, issued by Malacanang, formalizes this arrangement, allowing citizens to enjoy an extended break as the festive season unfolds. The proclamation underscores the belief that an extended weekend promotes family unity and strengthens relationships, contributing to the betterment of society. President Marcos emphasized that a lengthier weekend also serves to boost domestic tourism. To implement this decision in the private sector, he has directed the Department of Labor to issue the necessary circular.
The Department of Transportation said that a possible increase in MRT3's fare is seen by the first quarter of 2024. Transport Secretary Jaime Bautista said the talks regarding the fare hike are set for next year. The MRT3 management is seeking an additional 2 pesos and 29 centavos for the boarding fee, while a 21 centavo increase per kilometer. If the proposed fare hike is approved, the minimum fare will go up to 16 pesos from the current 13 pesos. Meanwhile, an end-to-end trip from North Avenue Station to Taft Avenue Station would increase to 34 from 28 pesos.
The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System, or MWSS Regulatory Office, has approved the rate adjustment request from Maynilad and Manila Water for 2024. Manila Water customers in the East Zone will experience a 6.41 pesos per cubic meter increase next year. For consumers using 10 cubic meters, this translates to a 34.13 peso uptick in their monthly bills, while those with a 20 cubic meter consumption will see an increase of 76.68 pesos, and 30 cubic meters will incur a hike of 187.01 pesos. In the West Zone, Maynilad's approved adjustment rate is 7.87 pesos per cubic meter. For 10 cubic meters, customers can expect a 45.38 peso increase, while those using 20 cubic meters will experience a 100.67 peso hike, and 30 cubic meters will see a 205.87 peso increase in their monthly bills. The MWSS clarified that the rate adjustment is attributed to inflation, despite a drop to 4.1% in November.
According to a recent Social Weather Stations or SWS survey, 48% of Filipino adults anticipate an improvement in their quality of life over the next 10 months. Only 40% of the respondents expect it to remain the same, while 6% believe it will worsen and 7% choose not to give a response. The resulting net personal optimism score stands a robust plus 42, earning an excellent classification from the SWS. This surge in optimism is linked to overall positive trends in balanced Luzon and Mindanao, despite declines in sentiment reported in Metro Manila and the Visayas.
Senator Grace Poe has reiterated her call for a review of the Public Utility Vehicle or PUV modernization program, citing a lack of safety nets for drivers and operators with the impending 31st of December consolidation deadline. Senator Poe noted that the program is allocated a budget of 1.6 billion pesos in 2024, but lacks measures to safeguard the livelihoods of around 300,000 drivers. She emphasized that funds have been allocated to the Department of Transportation since 2018 for the formulation of a route plan for PUVs. The route rationalization study is a critical aspect of the program as it determines the number of PUVs required for specific routes, ensuring the viability of their operations. However, as of now, only 9.5% or 155 out of 1,575 local government units have approved route plans. Senator Poe cautioned that adhering to the consolidation deadline would adversely affect thousands of drivers who have yet to organize themselves into cooperatives.
The House is set to push for the amendment of the term limits of elected officials when discussions on charter change is set to motion. This is after House Speaker Martin Romualdez raised the initiative to revisit the issue of the charter change to amend the economic provision of the 1987 Constitution using the People's Initiatives. Under the economic provision, a 60-40 rule has been implemented which caps foreign ownership of local firms at 40%. Meanwhile, Senior Deputy Speaker Aurelio Don Gonzales wanted to include political provisions under the Constituent Assembly or CONAS. According to the amendatory provision of the 1987 Constitution, the House's bicameral committee will convene talks to amend the Philippine Constitution. Gonzales has called for a re-election in the president's term limits, while local officials, including district representatives, will have 5 years with re-election with a total of 10 years of office.
Senate Minority Leader Aquilino Pimentel has questioned the additional 450 billion pesos insertion on unprogrammed appropriation from the 2024 national budget. Pimentel has claimed that the bicameral approved 2024 funds have violated the Philippine Constitution. An uptick on unprogrammed appropriations was seen from 281.9 billion pesos up to 731 billion pesos. Pimentel said he plans to raise the issue before the Supreme Court as the insertion of funds was questionable. According to the Department of Budget and Management, the unprogrammed appropriations are government projects or programs that have yet to secure funding. Senate Finance Committee Sonny Angara, however, previously said that the allotment of funds for the unprogrammed appropriations is for the government's priorities to have a sufficient budget.
An Indian warship, the Camorta-class anti-submarine warfare corvette INS Kadmat, has arrived in Manila for a goodwill visit amidst the ongoing naval tensions between the Philippines and China. As part of its regional deployment in the Indo-Pacific, the Indian Navy vessel will spend 2 days in the Philippines. This marks its second visit to the Philippines, with the first occurring in 2017. The visit includes a maritime partnership exercise between INS Kadmat and the Philippine Navy's BRP Ramon Alcaraz on the 13th of December in the West Philippine Sea. On Tuesday, India's ambassador to the Philippines, Shambu Kumaran, emphasized the significant importance of the Indo-Pacific region for India. He highlighted the central location of the Philippines within the region and expressed the strong partnership between the two countries, underscoring their close ties as fellow democracies.
Coming up, Venezuela and Guyana have agreed to a high-level meeting over the Essequibo region. UN General Assembly votes in favor of a Gaza ceasefire. And Argentina has devalued its currency, the peso, by more than 50%. Stay tuned, Mata ng Agila International will return for more global news.
Dumating ang taong masasabi mong tunay na kaibigan.
Yep! At kapag siya'y natagpuan na, huwag mo nang pakawalan.
Ang tunay na kaibigan, laging nandyan kahit kailan.
Handang gawin ang lahat. Maging happy ka lang.
Gagawin ang April Song! Para sa'yo, para sa pamilya, at para sa bayan.
Tulad na lang ng inyong mga bagong kaibigan.
Tuwing umaga,
Love!
Tunipet
And everything!
Lunes hanggang Biyernes,
6:30 ng umaga
sa Net 25! Let's not together! Tunipet and everything! Love and being, love Tunipet and
Mga problemang may kinalaman sa pang-araw-araw na pamumuhay.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Katiwalian at korupsyon sa kung saan-saan.
Ano sa palagay niyo?
Kalusugan,
Ano sa palagay niyo?
edukasyon,
Ano sa palagay nyo?
hanap buhay.
Ano sa palagay nyo?
Ang daming issue. Samahan ninyo sina Ali Soto at Pat P. Daza sa pagbusisi sa lahat ng yan at iba pa. Ano sa palagay nyo? Year 3 na!
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. The Philippines has joined calls for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza amid the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. The United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution demanding a ceasefire and the unconditional release of hostages in Gaza. The Philippines, along with 152 other member states, voted in favor of the resolution, emphasizing the need to adhere to international humanitarian law, including the principles of proportionality and distinction in response to security threats. Philippine Permanent Representative to the UN, Antonio Lagdameo, stated that the country condemns the terrorist attacks by Hamas, but believes that a humanitarian ceasefire is essential to stop the loss of life and suffering. He reiterated Manila's commitment to a two-state solution that respects the rights and needs of both Palestinian and Israeli civilians.
Humanitarian aid is a vital tool to fight and end extreme poverty by 2030. Many countries provide humanitarian packages to achieve global goals and ensure equality and social justice for everyone. This year, the world has faced significant humanitarian crises. War, extreme famine, drastic climate change, earthquakes, torrential floods, food insecurity, and forced displacement are causing great hardship around the globe. Data from the United Nations Coordinated Humanitarian Aid plans show that governments around the world have contributed around $20 billion in 2023. The United States has released almost half of the aid at $9.3 million. Records show Ukraine received the largest share of U.S. funding with 8.6%, followed by Somalia with 8.3% and Ethiopia with 7.6%. At 46.5%, food security was by far the sector receiving the most U.S. humanitarian aid. Germany donated nearly $1.6 million. Japan delivered $686 million of humanitarian aid. United Kingdom, Canada, Norway, Sweden, and France also contributed millions of dollars. Despite the $20 billion in aid given globally this year, the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Human Affairs said that figure only represents 35% of what the UN assesses to be the required funding for the crisis its aid plans have set out to cover. Though often connected, international humanitarian assistance is different from official development assistance. The latter is often referred to as foreign aid, which is used for long-term assistance, such as structural issues like systematic poverty. Humanitarian aid, on the other hand, is needed during emergencies and in the aftermath. From the conflict between Russia and Ukraine to the violence in Sudan and now the war between Israel and Hamas. Some analysts say conflict will continue to rise in different parts of the world and has become today's driving factor for the need for much of the world's humanitarian aid.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his Guyanese counterpart Irfan Ali will meet on Thursday to discuss their country's escalating disputes over the oil-rich Essequibo territory. Brazil's President Inácio Lula da Silva will attend the dialogue upon both sides' requests. The meeting will be held at St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves said in a letter to Maduro and Ali that the meeting would be held under the auspices of that organization and another regional body. He urged Maduro and Ali to concur with the assessment in the quest for peaceful coexistence, respect for international law, and the de-escalation of conflicts or avoidance of the use of threats or threats of force. Essequibo has historically been controlled by Guyana, but tensions soared over Essequibo when Maduro's government held a referendum in which 95% of voters supported declaring Venezuela its rightful owner.
United States President Joe Biden has sent another $200 million in weapons to Ukraine. This is under the Presidential Drawdown Authority for military assistance. Biden, however, did not specify the exact contents of the aid package. U.S. National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby once hinted that the White House was likely to provide another support package for Kyiv before the end of 2023. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Washington on December 11. This is in a bid to secure another support for Ukraine's war against Russia.
In the U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson meets with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Johnson says the Biden administration's strategy to help Ukraine defeat Russia lacks the clarity and the detail. Bernadette Regina reports.
At the Capitol in Washington, D.C., House Speaker Mike Johnson says he had a good meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky. Johnson says he reiterated the U.S. stands with Ukraine and against Putin's invasion. The American people, Johnson says, stand for freedom and are on the right side of this fight. The Republican House Speaker, however, says they need a clearer picture of Biden's strategy on how to help Ukraine win the war.
I have asked the White House since the day that I was handed the gavel as Speaker for clarity. We need a clear articulation of the strategy to allow Ukraine to win. And thus far, their responses have been insufficient. They have not provided us the clarity and the detail that we have requested over and over since literally 24 hours after I was handed the gavel as Speaker of the House.
Johnson says the administration seems to be asking for billions of additional dollars with no appropriate oversight and no clear strategy to win. He says that their first condition on any national security supplemental spending package is about the U.S.'s own national security first. Zelensky met the leaders of both parties in the U.S. Senate. Democratic Majority Leader Chuck Schumer warns that Ukraine needs the aid quickly to help Russia from winning. Zelensky then went on to the House of Representatives to confer with Johnson. Bernadette Regini for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Geneva, Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian says Israel and the United States will never be able to eliminate Hamas. Myla Simbulan tells us more.
Iranian Foreign Minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian warns that the situation in the Gaza Strip could lead to an unforeseeable and uncontrollable explosion of violence in the region. Speaking in Geneva at an event marking the 75th anniversary since the signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Amir Abdullahian adds that Iran has repeatedly announced that if the war does not stop, the possibility of expansion of the scope of the war will increase every second. Amir Abdullahian says war is not the answer. He says Israel and the United States will never be able to eliminate Hamas. Israel, he says, cannot free its prisoners through war. Amir Abdullahian warns if the situation continues, there is a possibility of an unforeseeable and uncontrollable explosion. This, he says, is what the Americans have not understood up to this day, and that if they continue not understanding this, he warns the U.S. will also bear the consequences. Meanwhile, Saudi Foreign Minister Faisal bin Farhan says the war, if it does not end, will devastate the region.
Allowing this crisis to continue will have a damaging impact on regional peace and security. In fact, international security and the credibility of United Nations bodies are impacted by allowing selective implementation of international law.
Myla Simbulan for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Meanwhile, at the same meeting, Israeli ambassador to the UN condemned Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki for his speech saying Israel is deliberately starving people in the Gaza Strip as a weapon of war. Kathleen Gao has more.
Israeli ambassador to the UN Mirav Elon Shahar spars with Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki at a meeting in Geneva. Shahar says in his address, al-Maliki is not able to say anything about Hamas, nothing about the atrocities that were committed by Hamas. Shahar accuses the Palestinian Authority of shielding the Hamas terrorist organization for years and years in the multilateral arena. The UN General Assembly was due to vote Tuesday on a non-binding resolution demanding an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. This is a call that the paralyzed Security Council has so far failed to make. The United States used its veto on Friday to halt a draft text calling for a ceasefire, the latest sign of impasse. The U.S. is one of only 5 permanent members of the Security Council. The council took more than a month after the start of the war between Israel and Hamas militants to speak out. It called in mid-November for humanitarian pauses in the conflict. This after 4 rejected texts. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres warns of a looming complete breakdown of public order in the besieged Gaza Strip. Many countries and human rights organizations deplored last Friday's Security Council failure. Guterres on Sunday described the Council's authority and credibility as undermined. Kathleen Ga for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The 193-member United Nations General Assembly, or UNGA, has voted in favor of a resolution calling for a humanitarian ceasefire in war-torn Gaza. The resolution passed overwhelmingly with 153 countries voting in favor, 23 abstaining, and 10 countries voting against, including Israel and the United States. While the resolution is non-binding, it serves as an indicator of global opinion. The vote comes as international pressure builds on Israel to end its months-long assault on Gaza, where more than 18,000 Palestinians have been killed, the majority of them women and children. More than 80% of Gaza's 2.3 million residents have also been displaced. Relentless airstrikes and an Israeli siege have created humanitarian conditions in the Palestinian territory as the Israeli military offensive has severely restricted access to food, fuel, water, and electricity to the Gaza Strip. Tuesday's vote comes on the heels of a failed resolution in the UN Security Council, which the United States vetoed and similarly called for a humanitarian ceasefire.
If you are against the destruction and displacement of the Palestinian people, you have to be in favor of an immediate ceasefire. When you refuse to call for a ceasefire, you are refusing to call for the only thing that can put an end to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. This is how Israel is conducting the war, through atrocities.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres took the extraordinary step of invoking Article 99 of the UN Charter, which allows him to issue warnings about serious threats to international peace. The last time it was used was in 1971.
And while indiscriminate rocket fire by Hamas into Israel and the use of civilians as human shields are in contravention with the laws of war, such conduct does not absolve Israel on its own violations. International humanitarian law includes the duty to protect civilians and to comply with the principles of distinction, proportionality, and precaution.
Spanish lawmakers gave the go-ahead for Parliament to examine the amnesty bill for Catalan separatists. The bill was pledged by Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez in exchange for support to remain in power. Sanchez said the amnesty offer was too complex to explain to the Spanish public. But he insisted it was a necessary decision to move towards a resolution of the conflict with Catalonia. Lawmakers officially launched a parliamentary debate with a vote of 178 deputies in favor out of 350.
Votos emitidos 350, votos sí 178, votos no 172, abstenciones 0. En consecuencia, se toma en consideración la proposición de ley. Continuamos con la votación de...
Todo el mundo estamos convencidos de que la ley de amnistía es necesaria para acabar con la división de los últimos años. Es necesaria para construir un proyecto común llamado España en el que todas y todos podamos estar más o menos cómodos y encontrar nuestro lugar.
Lawmakers also approved the creation of 3 commissions sought by Catalan separatist parties, including one to investigate a spying scandal involving Catalan leaders. Legal experts say the amnesty bill will likely take several months to become law. But when it does, it will allow the courts to drop the charges against hundreds of separatist leaders and activists facing legal action over the October 2017 crisis.
Argentines learned over the supper hour Tuesday night that their money is now worth less than half of what it was an hour earlier. The government of newly elected President Javier Milei devalued the currency by just over 50%.
Economy Economy Minister Luis Caputo delivered the bad news in a recorded video message.
Hoy el Estado sostiene artificialmente.
Along with devaluing the peso, the government has slashed fuel and transport subsidies and cut 9 government ministries, which will eliminate about 1/3 of all political jobs. Argentina's 140% inflation rate prompted the austerity measures. The battle to tame the inflationary tiger is going to be a long one and a painful one. In fact, inflation is likely to worsen in the short term. Milei isn't sugarcoating his prescription to heal the country's economy. He says for the next few months, things are going to get worse. Bottom line, says the president, there is no money. People are going to see an immediate loss of purchasing power. Their money won't buy as much. For now, they might accept it, but if poverty deepens and the pain lasts too long, Milei could face unrest and turmoil. Already, 40% of the country's population lives in poverty. Minister Caputo notes that Argentina has had an addiction to spending more than it earns, posting a deficit for 113 of the last 123 years. And now the pains of withdrawal from that addiction will be borne by the general population. Thomas Eyelikeness from Atanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Cryptocurrency exchange Qcoin has agreed to a $22 million settlement with New York users. The settlement includes $16.7 million in refunds that will be paid out to 177,800 New York-based KuCoin investors. This is on top of the $5.3 million fine that KuCoin will pay directly to New York State. KuCoin is one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, but it faced allegations that it illegally operated without proper registration and misled investors. As part of settlement terms, KuCoin also agreed to fully prohibit New York-based investors from accessing its platform within the next 120 days per the Attorney General's order. The company will also identify relevant trading accounts tied to customers with New York addresses or residencies.
The U.S. House of Representatives has approved a ban on imports of Russian uranium as a move to exert pressure on Moscow amid the conflict in Ukraine. It is uncertain whether the bill, which now needs to move through the Senate and be signed by U.S. President Joe Biden to become law, will be passed in time this year due to the Senate schedule. Lawmakers passed the bill by voice vote, suspending the usual voting rules on the measure. If enacted, the ban on Russian uranium imports would take effect 90 days after passage. The measure includes waivers in the case of supply concerns for domestic reactors. These waivers could permit the import of low-enriched uranium from Russia if the U.S. Energy Secretary determines there is no alternative source available for a nuclear reactor's operation or if the shipments are deemed in the national interest. Up next, like something out of a true crime documentary, 2 women have been murdered in a town in Alaska. Unilever is being investigated over its environmental claims. And Tesla unveils its humanoid robot. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a short break.
Makaka-relate kay you.
Menopause. Meron ka bang nararamdaman ng mga signs ng menopause?
Menopause really happens. In my case, I had a condition called endometriosis.
Miss Corina, ganda po ng hair nyo. Ano pong shampoo nyo?
Mapa-senior man kay you.
My apos are here. They're here with me and they give me such joy. And so, kung hindi ako magtatrabaho, how could I spoil them?
O Gen Z?
Nar is actually an accent from Australia. So like when you say no, you don't say no. They say nar.
Bida kayo dito.
Sumay!
Let's just always choose to be kind.
Kaya ugaliin ang tumutok kung saan masaya at maganda ang simula ng araw. 10 a.m. to 12, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, kada umaga.
An explosion and fire in a building next to Argentina's Labor Secretariat in Buenos Aires has claimed at least 1 life. Dozens of others have been injured in the blaze, which broke out around the lunch hour Tuesday. Bobby Soriano has the details.
Buenos Aires local media reports the victim is a woman between 35 and 40 years of age. Rescuers found her body on the staircase between the 8th and 9th floors. At least 42 people have suffered injuries, and at least 35 have ended up in the hospital. Authorities say the fire began on the 6th and 7th floors of the 14-story building, and flames spread to the 8th floor. There is no indication what caused the blast. Firefighters have ruled out a gas leak. About a dozen people fled to the roof of the building to escape the flames. Bobby Soriano from Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
In Queensland, a suspect has overpowered police during an arrest on Gold Coast. The video footage shows how the policewoman attempted to arrest the male suspect. At the scene, the female officer ordered the suspect to get out of his car. Upon leaving his vehicle, the officer tases him. The suspect, however, tackles the policewoman, toppling her down. The police officer then wrestles the man. However, tables have turned as the suspect manages to pin her down despite being tased. The female officer suffered head injuries. Authorities said the suspect was drug-affected, proven by his strength and attitude during the arrest. Queensland police said the offender was arrested and taken into custody.
The tragic stories of two Alaskan women, Jennifer Kirk and Susanna Norton, who were victims of domestic violence before their deaths, are now gaining attention as their families seek justice. Both women, who were Inupiaq, had dated sons of a former borough mayor, both of whom had a history of domestic violence, with convictions related to the abuse. Jennifer Kirk was found dead with strangulation marks and a bullet hole, initially declared a suicide by local police. Susanna Norton was later discovered beaten and strangled, with an autopsy determining her death as a homicide. Despite the sons' previous convictions for assaulting Kirk and Norton, they have not been charged in connection to the deaths. In Alaska, the likelihood of women being killed by a man is 2.5 times the U.S. national average, and Native women are particularly at risk. While elected leaders in the state have pledged action, the incidents underscore the need for continued efforts to address violence against women, particularly within Indigenous communities. A state council has been established to focus on missing and murdered Indigenous persons, reflecting the urgency of addressing these issues.
The teenage twins of jailed Iranian activist Narges Mohammadi have accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf. Mohammadi, who is serving a 10-year jail term in Tehran, won this year's prize for her work fighting against the oppression of women in Iran. In a speech smuggled from her prison read by her children, she continued to denounce Iran's tyrannical government. The prestigious Peace Prize was handed out in Oslo on Sunday, along with the other Nobel Prize or prizes for literature, science, and economics. Narges Mohammadi has for years been a prominent human rights figure in Iran. The 51-year-old has been in jail almost continuously since 2010 and in total has been arrested 13 times, convicted 5 times, and sentenced to a total of 31 years in prison. Her husband, political activist Taghi Rahmani, lives in exile in Paris with their 2 children, who she has not seen within years. She praised young Iranians who she said have transformed the streets and public spaces into a place of widespread civil resistance, referring to the protests that began last year following the death of Mahsa Amini. There was an empty chair on the podium between her children to mark her absence.
La force de ce mouvement réside dans l'action des femmes iraniennes. Nous savons ce que nous voulons plus, mieux que ce que nous ne voulons pas. Nous sommes engagés, nous y croyons et nous considérons la victoire comme certaine.
UK lawmakers narrowly approved Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's controversial plan to send migrants to Rwanda, sparking internal divisions within the Conservative Party. From Europe, Arian Celestino reports.
UK lawmakers voted in favor of the government's plan to send migrants to Rwanda, causing a division within Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Conservative Party.
The Safety of Rwanda, Asylum and Immigration Bill, in response to a Supreme Court ruling, received 313 votes in favor and 269 against in a knife-edge parliamentary vote. The emergency bill aims to address illegal deportations and is part of broader government efforts to reduce immigration levels, a key issue for the upcoming election. Sunak's reputation hinges on the plan, which has sparked internal Tory conflict. Right-wing factions criticize the proposal as insufficient, while liberal Tories fear potential violations of international law. MP Mark Francois announced that the 5 families of right-wing Tory factions decided not to support the bill, citing omissions. They plan to introduce amendments in January, setting the stage for further political challenges for Sunak in the new year.
Reporting from Portsmouth, United Kingdom, this is Arian Celestino for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Dove soap is facing investigations over its environmental claims. The Competition and Markets Authority, or CMA, said shoppers are being misled by Dove's overstatement of its green products. CMA also argued certain statements and language used by Dove appear vague and broad. The watchdog said some product ingredients of Dove and its use of green leaves in images were packaged to exaggerate how natural the product seemed, known as corporate greenwashing. Dove has refuted the claim, saying it was surprised and disappointed with the CMA's announcement.
The day before, an open-world zombie survival game faced a rapid downfall, leading to its developer closing down just 4 days after the game's launch. The game had generated significant anticipation after a hype trailer in 2021 and became one of Steam's most wish-listed titles. However, upon its early access release on the 7th of December, the game received unfavorable reviews. Despite being marketed as a survival MMO, players criticized the day before for issues including a scarcity of players to team up with, sparse enemy encounters, and numerous complaints about bugs, crashes, and server problems. Following the launch, the developer, Fantastic, announced plans for a substantial update to address issues. But the studio went silent for 3 days as negative reviews accumulated. On the 11th of December, Fantastic declared the day before a financial failure, leading to the closure of the development studio. Speculations among players suggested the game was a scam, with accusations that Fantastic took early access funds, produced a low-quality asset flip, and was now shutting down to keep the money. Fantastic disputed this narrative, asserting that it had not taken money from pre-orders or crowdfunding and that any funds received were used to settle debts.
The New York City Fire Department, or FDNY, has reported a seemingly miraculous outcome in the search for victims following a partial building collapse in the Bronx. FDNY personnel completed its search of the rubble at the Sod on West Burnside Avenue and fell in place in Morris Heights and found no victims. The collapse occurred on Monday evening, with dramatic video footage capturing people running for safety as a corner of the 7-story building came crashing down. The building housed 6 commercial businesses and numerous residential apartments. FDNY members responded swiftly, arriving on the scene just 1 minute and 36 seconds after the call came in. The building was evacuated and its stability is now under scrutiny. The cause of the collapse is not immediately known and will be part of the ongoing investigation. Tesla has unveiled an update to its Optimus program, showcasing the Gen 2 Optimus prototype with a redesigned appearance.
Coming right up, video gamers say goodbye to an important gaming convention. Shohei Ohtani gets a major payday from the LA Dodgers. And fans can't wait as the Asia Artist Awards are less than a day away. Catch more news in sports and entertainment when we return.
Mga kaibigan, mga mga magulang, mga kapatid, mga taga-suporta at tagahanga. Narito na ang bituin ng mga kabataang tumanggap sa hamon para abutin ang kanilang mga pangarap. Awesome! Next!
Dapat mga bata kayo, cherish it, enjoy it, love it.
Nakikita unti-unti yung talent sa inyo. Huhukayin pa natin yan. Pagtiwala lang kayo sa proseso.
Pag minahal nyo yung trabaho ninyo, mamahalin kayo ng trabaho nyo, hindi babalik.
And the process might be hard, but the process is beautiful. So you gotta learn how to trust the process.
Tunghayan natin ang makulay, makabuluhan at makasaysayan nilang paglalakbay tungo sa hinahangad nilang tagumpay. One goal, one dream. Road to Starkada. December 18 na, Monday to Friday, 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Let's together, Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
Ang mikroponong ito'y naglalahad ng saloobin. Oras na para ipasa sa bagong makatan natin. Galing ay ipamalas, pangarap ilabas. Itodo ang lakas, rap sa Pilipinas.
The annual Video Games Expo E3 has been permanently canceled. The Electronic Entertainment Expo bid farewell to gamers after 2 decades of hosting the convention. According to the Entertainment Software Association, initially E3 was planned for a comeback after the COVID-19 pandemic dealt a fatal blow to the confab. This, however, was scrapped and did not put on an online alternative. E3 is once an avenue for gaming's biggest companies to debut their titles and teasers. This, however, declined after more gaming companies shifted to streaming their own events for announcements. LA Angels superstar and Japanese all-star rookie Shohei Ohtani is set to make the biggest deal in sports history. Vin Pasco has more.
Over the weekend, the two-time Most Valuable Player Award winner, Shohei Showtime Ohtani, received the biggest deal in team sports history with a whopping $700 million deal with the LA Dodgers. Olympics.com says the amount is higher than the $679 million deal for France's Kylian Mbappe with Paris Saint-Germain in 2022, $674 million deal for Lionel Messi with Barcelona in 2017, and Cristiano Ronaldo's $500 million agreement with Al Nassr. The total is also higher than the largest American football contract of $450 million given to Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs. It far exceeds the baseball deals of $426.5 million given to Mike Trout of the Los Angeles Angels and the $360 million given to Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees. Under the contract, Ohtani's average yearly salary of $70 million is well above the previous high of about $43 million that pitchers Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander struck with the New York Mets. His average yearly salary is also higher than the combined salary of all players with the Baltimore Orioles or the Oakland A's this year. Reporting for Sports, Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Andre Braugher, the two-time Emmy-winning star of TV series including Homicide, Life on the Street, Men of a Certain Age, and hit comedy series Brooklyn Nine-Nine, has died. His publicist Jennifer Allen told the press that he passed after a brief bout with illness, which saw him in and out of the hospital. He was 61 years old. The Chicago-born actor would establish himself in the role of Detective Frank Pembleton, the lead role on Homicide: Life on the Street, whose writer would go on create The Wire. He would win his first career Emmy for the role, taking the trophy for lead actor in a drama series in 1998. He would go on to play a very different kind of cop on a very different kind of show, shifting to comedy as Captain Ray Holt on the Andy Samberg starring Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It would run for 8 seasons from 2013 to 2021. Brower was married for more than 30 years to his Homicide co-star Amy Brabson. He is also survived by sons Michael, Isaiah, and John Wesley, his brother Charles Jennings, and his mother Sally Brower. Good news to those who are looking for films to binge watch at the beginning of the new year. Mark your calendars as Net25 Films' first movie, Monday First Screening, will be available on Netflix starting 2024. This is a story of the second chance for love of 2 senior citizens that formed when they watched a free movie on Monday. Monday First Screening is starred by 2 of the best actors in the country, Mr. Ricky Davao and Miss Gina Alahar. Also included in the cast are Ian Ignacio, Che Ramos, Soliman Cruz, Ruby Ruiz, Rain Pagani, Allen Abrenica, David Minimoto, and Joy Cerro. So let's enjoy Monday First Screening of Net25 Films on Netflix, starting January 1, 2024. In a historic turn of events, the 8th Asia Artist Awards has officially opened its doors, setting the stage at the world's largest indoor arena, the Philippine Arena in Bukawi, Bulacan. For the first time ever, the Philippines will host the annual Asia Artist Awards, showcasing the pinnacle of Asian entertainment, particularly on the rise of Hallyu Wave. This star-studded evening will be hosted by Kang Daniel, Jang Won-young of EVA, and Sung Han Bin of Zero Base One. This marks a significant milestone as well-known actors and actresses such as Kim Yong-dae, An Hyo-sop, Kim Seon-ho, Kim Se-jung, Lee Jun-hyuk, and Moon Ga-young are set to grace the awards night at the Philippine Arena. World-class performances from distinguished K-pop groups will set the stage on fire, including 17's Subonit Buseksun, Stray Kids New Jeans, Les Seraphim, ITZY, Stacy, Nemnext, Boy Next Door, Zero Base One, The Boys, and Kep Winner. Joining them in the pool of K-pop acts are Dreamcatcher, Lapalus, ONEUS, WIB, and KARD. Local talents such as SB19 and Horizon are also set to shine on stage, with a special performance on SB19's collaboration with Team from Hybe Labels. The arrival of the international stars has excited Pinoy fans, confirming the event's global appeal in the Asian entertainment industry.
We're halfway through the work week, and to send you off this week, here's a quote from Andre Brower. My family life and my ideals, my commitment to the community and to other people, all people, has been improved. I think less about myself and more about my community.
And it doesn't have to be a huge community. It could be the small community around you, people you work with, people you encounter every day. The little things you do to brighten their day really matters.
That's right. And I think that as we get older, that is the direction that we should be going. We should care about other people more than we do care about ourselves.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.